The year is 1812, but not the one we remember. The Atlantic is colder, harsher, as if it already senses that history is about to shift its course. On one horizon sails a ship born from rebellion, black-hulled, swift, and defiant, the USS Constitution. On the other, a vessel forged from empire, majestic, battle-scarred, and legendary, HMS Victory. In our timeline, they never met, but in this one, they do, and their meeting will change everything. It begins not in Washington or London, but off the coast of Halifax. A confrontation that should have been routine. An American convoy carrying arms and grain encounters a British patrol enforcing blockade law. A warning shot misfires. One ship burns. Dozens die. And the uneasy peace that had lingered since the Revolution shatters like glass beneath cannon thunder. Within weeks, both nations mobilize. Britain, exhausted by 2 decades of war against Napoleon, tries to contain the new conflict. America, proud and restless, sees opportunity, a chance to prove itself on the open sea. But this war is not fought by fleets alone. It is fought by symbols. HMS Victory is the Crown's most famous ship. Nelson's flagship at Trafalgar, the vessel that broke Napoleon's navy and cemented British mastery of the waves. She is old now, yet revered, a living relic that still carries the soul of the empire. Her new captain, Philip Durham, served under Nelson himself. He is stern, unyielding, haunted by glory he did not earn but must somehow defend. Across the ocean, Captain Isaac Hull commands the Constitution, the pride of a young republic still learning to believe in itself. She is faster than any frigate of her class, her hull built from dense live oak so strong that British shot has been known to bounce from it. Her crew calls her Old Ironsides, half in jest, half in awe. In this alternate timeline, both ships are drawn toward the same waters, the mid-Atlantic, near the Azores, each sent to protect convoys, each unaware that destiny is about to pit them against one another. The morning they first glimpse each other is deceptively peaceful. A pale sun rises over calm seas. The wind hums low through rigging. Durham stands on the quarterdeck of Victory, spyglass to his eye. He sees a dark silhouette cresting the horizon, broad-beamed, graceful, flying the stars and stripes. An American frigate, he mutters, then, almost to himself, and bold enough not to flee. On the Constitution, Hull lowers his own glass and feels a chill. The ship before him is larger than anything he's faced. 3 full gun decks, sails like a floating fortress. He knows that outline. Every sailor does. Victory. Nelson's ghost made wood and sail. For a long suspended moment neither captain acts. It is as if the ocean itself hesitates. Durham's first officer breaks the silence. "Orders, sir?" Durham's answer is quiet, deliberate. "We close the distance. Slowly. Let them understand whose sea this is." Hull's response comes from instinct rather than command. He feels it in the deck beneath his boots, the pulse of his ship, the rhythm of a creature made to run. "We hold the wind," he says, "and make them chase us." Thus begins the long approach. 2 giants circling, studying, testing. The Victory moves with regal authority, her hull cutting steady through the swell. The Constitution dances around her, lighter, quicker, her sails angled for speed. Cannon crews stand ready, hands on tackle ropes, eyes fixed on the enemy that draws ever closer. As the distance narrows, the first signal flags rise on Victory. "Prepare for action." Drums roll across her decks. 800 men take their posts in perfect order, each movement drilled 1,000 times before. On the Constitution, the mood is different. Quieter, tenser. No brass bands, no ritual. Just the murmured prayers of a crew who know they are about to face the greatest ship on earth. The wind shifts. The last light of morning flickers against the water. Hull takes a breath. Durham raises his hand. 2 voices cry the same word across the sea. "Fire!" The first broadsides roar like thunder. Iron meets oak, smoke rolls outward. The sky itself seems to shudder. The Victory's triple decks erupt in flame and recoil. Shot after shot slams into the American frigate, but many of them glance off her dense timbers, burying shallowly or deflecting away. British gunners stare in disbelief. "She shrugs them off," someone shouts. The Constitution answers with fury. Her long 24-pounders bark in unison, double-shotted for close range. The impacts hammer Victory's hull, smashing gun ports, splintering bulkheads. Men are thrown to the deck, deafened by the shock. The duel becomes a storm. Thunder, smoke, screams, and wind blending into a single unbroken sound. Decks slick with seawater and blood. Masts creak like giants in pain, yet neither ship yields. Durham's voice cuts through the chaos. "Keep her to windward! Let them see Britannia fights to the last!" Hull's reply comes in orders barked over cannon roar. "Turn hard! Give her no broadside she can bear!" The Constitution heels into the wind, nimble, carving a circle around the slower ship of the line. Victory tries to pivot, but her great mass resists. She cannot match the younger frigate's agility. Still, every volley from her 32-pounders is deadly. One round shot smashes through Constitution's main deck, killing 3 men outright. The air fills with splinters. Lethal, invisible rain. The sea boils with smoke. Neither captain can see the other now, only the flashes of gunfire through drifting clouds of powder. And somewhere amid the noise, both men realize the truth. This is no mere battle. It is an argument between centuries. The old world clinging to discipline and empire, and the new, daring to believe that liberty alone can stand against it. The day drags on. The sun sinks red into the waves. Both ships burn, both crews bleed, and the ocean drinks from them equally. As darkness falls, the guns finally fall silent. The wind dies, and through the smoke 2 shattered silhouettes drift apart. Neither victorious, neither defeated, yet both forever changed. The night ahead will decide which one survives. Night falls across the Atlantic like a curtain of smoke. The storm of battle fades to whispers, the creak of wounded timbers, the hiss of embers cooling on wet planks. 2 ships drift in darkness, their lanterns flickering like dying stars. The Constitution lists slightly to port. Her rigging hangs in tatters. Captain Isaac Hull walks the deck in silence, his boots crunching over splinters and spent shot. Men move like shadows, binding wounds, hauling bodies, checking the pumps. The smell of salt and blood lingers thick in the air. Mainmast is cracked but standing, his lieutenant reports quietly. Rudder still answers. 18 dead, 30 wounded. Hull nods without speaking. His face is streaked with soot, but his eyes are sharp, alive with the stubborn light that carried the ship through the day. He looks across the water. Through the haze, a dim glow marks where victory lies, the outline of her 3 decks barely visible against the Black Sea. She's still afloat, Hull murmurs, and she'll fight again. On the Victory, Captain Durham knows the same truth. His ship is bleeding. The lower gun deck floods with each roll of the swell. Her main yard is gone, her rigging half severed, yet her heart, her guns, still live. The men patch holes by lantern light, the deck glistening red beneath their feet. Durham leans against the shattered railing, his hand bound in linen. The night wind stings the open wound on his arm. His first officer, grim and pale, waits for orders. "We hold until dawn," Durham says. "No retreat, no surrender." Victory does not vanish into the dark. He turns his gaze toward the horizon, toward that unseen enemy beyond the mist. He can almost feel Hull's presence, the same resolve, the same fatigue. 2 men separated by a sea, united by purpose. Hours pass, the night deepens, the ocean breathes like a great animal beneath them. Hull descends to his cabin, where the oil lamp burns low over a map of the Atlantic. He traces their position with one finger. "We're too far from help," he mutters. "Too far from home." He closes his eyes for a moment. In his mind he sees Boston Harbor, calm and golden, the smell of pine and tar. He wonders if the Republic will even know what happens out here. Above him, the crew whispers quietly. A sailor plucks a single note on a violin. A fragile sound that disappears into the wind. Another prays aloud for dawn. Across the waves, Durham writes in his logbook by shaking candlelight. "Ship damaged, crew exhausted. Enemy unknown frigate presumed American. Engagement to resume at first light. May God preserve His Majesty's fleet." But when he sets down the quill, he adds a final line no officer is meant to write. "If this be our end, may it be worthy of the name Victory." Just before dawn, the wind returns, the smoke clears, and both captains wake to the same sight, their enemy still there. Hull stands on deck as the sun's first light cuts through the mist. The Constitution groans as she turns into the wind. The ocean glitters with debris, floating barrels and torn canvas. "Signal the guns," Hull orders. "One more round." On Victory, the boatswain's whistle shrieks. Drums echo through her decks once more. Men load powder and shot, their faces streaked with grime, their hands trembling from exhaustion. Durham braces himself at the quarterdeck. "For the King! Fire!" The day explodes again. 2 broadsides crash out almost simultaneously. Thunder answering thunder. Shot tears through rigging, through bulwarks, through men. The sea erupts in foam and flame. This time, the battle is closer, brutal, intimate. The Constitution dives across Victory's bow, raking her decks from stem to stern. Splinters fly like shrapnel. The British flagship shudders as her foremast topples, crashing through a forest of rigging. On the American deck, cheers erupt, but Hull silences them. "Don't waste it," he growls. "Circle and strike again." He feels the ship move beneath him, light and quick, gliding like a predator through the smoke. They fire again, this time into Victory's exposed flank. Durham grips the rail, refusing to fall. "Steady, men," he shouts. "Return fire! Give her everything!" The next volley from Victory hammers Constitution's midships. The deck quakes. A gun carriage breaks free, crushing 2 sailors. For a moment, both ships are engulfed in fire and screams, so close that their masts almost tangle. Then, through the chaos, Durham sees a chance. "Boarding parties, now!" The British surge forward, ropes thrown, grapnels biting into the Constitution's hull. Boats cross the few yards of sea between them, filled with red-coated Marines and desperate sailors. Hull's men meet them at the rail. Pistols crack, cutlasses flash. The deck becomes a storm of men, shouting, striking, falling. Smoke blinds both sides. The air tastes of iron and salt. Hull finds himself face to face with Durham amid the melee. The 2 captains lock blades, each struggling for balance on the blood-slicked deck. Their swords scrape, spark, and catch. Durham's voice is a rasp. "Your ship fights like a demon." Hull's reply is breathless. "Yours refuses to die." For a heartbeat, they stand locked together, eyes meeting through the smoke. Not enemies, but reflections. Then, almost at the same instant, both lower their weapons. Around them, the fighting slows. Men hesitate, staring at their captains, unsure whether to kill or stop. Hull speaks first. "Look around you," he says quietly. "We've both done enough." Durham turns his gaze over the deck. The dead, the shattered guns, the sea stained red. He exhales, slow and heavy. "Enough," he agrees. Orders echo through both ships. "Cease fire. Stand down." The guns fall silent. The smoke thins. And in that fragile quiet, the Atlantic seems to sigh, as if relieved that men have finally remembered they are mortal. The Constitution and Victory drift apart, both crippled, both aflame, but both still afloat. 2 survivors of a war neither truly wanted. As the sun climbs higher, Hull and Durham meet again at the rail, their ships barely holding together. They exchange one last nod, not of victory, but of understanding. Whatever happens next, both know this day will echo far beyond their lifetimes, because in that strange dawn, amid smoke and ruin, Empire and Republic met as equals, and the sea, indifferent and eternal, bore witness. 3 days later, the Atlantic was eerily still. The storm of war had passed, leaving only the groan of wrecked timbers and the low hum of the wind. The Constitution and the Victory floated like ghosts upon the gray sea, their sails torn to ribbons, their masts jagged and blackened by fire. No longer ships of war, but monuments adrift. The water between them shimmered with drifting debris, gun carriages, barrels, fragments of flags. Sharks circled silently beneath, and above, the gulls came, drawn by the scent of battle's end. On Constitution's deck, the survivors moved slowly, too exhausted even to speak. They bound wounds with strips of canvas, scooped seawater to clean the blood, and prayed for rescue that might never come. Captain Hull leaned over the rail, watching the Victory through his glass. Her hull was scorched, her masts shattered, yet she still floated. "She's alive," he murmured. His first lieutenant, face pale with fatigue, asked quietly, "Shall we finish her, sir? Before she can fire again?" Hull lowered the spyglass. His voice came soft but firm. "No, this fight's over." He turned to the men. "Signal them. We'll send aid if they'll have it." The crew exchanged glances, disbelief flickering in their tired eyes. But Hull's expression silenced them. Across the waves, aboard the crippled Victory, Captain Durham was giving a similar order. His officers protested, some out of pride, some out of habit. "Sir, they'll hang us if they think we parley," one cried. Durham ignored him. "Hoist a flag of truce." Minutes later, 2 battered boats pushed off, one from each ship. They met in the middle, rocking gently between the wrecks. British and American sailors, faces blackened with powder, looked at one another through smoke and disbelief. No one spoke at first. Then an American offered his canteen. A British sailor took it, drank, and passed it back. That was all it took. Soon, men from both ships crossed the waters, not with muskets, but with stretchers and ropes. Together they carried the wounded, shared rations, tended to each other's dead. The sea that had divided them became their common ground. By evening the decks were quiet again. Hull and Durham met face to face on the Constitution's ruined quarterdeck, the setting sun painting the water gold and crimson. Durham's uniform was torn. His right arm hung in a sling. Hull's coat was stiff with dried blood. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the silence between them heavier than any gunfire. Durham broke it first. "You might have sunk us," he said. "Why didn't you?" Hull's answer was simple. "Because it wouldn't change anything. The sea's already taken enough." Durham gave a faint, weary smile. "Then we agree, Captain." They shook hands, not as victors, not as enemies, but as men who had survived the impossible. Word of their truce spread quickly among the crews. Men who had been killing each other hours before now sat side by side, sharing what little rum remained. They spoke in low voices about home, about families, about the war they suddenly no longer understood. As the stars rose, Hull stood at the stern, gazing into the endless dark. His ship creaked softly beneath him. He thought of his country, so young, so eager to prove itself, and wondered what this battle would mean when the story reached home. Durham stood on his own deck doing the same. He knew the Admiralty would not celebrate a truce. They would want victory or death. But he also knew that this moment, fragile and quiet, was something greater. When rescue ships finally arrived, British first, American soon after, both captains made the same request, that their men be treated as equals. In London, the news arrived weeks later. The Admiralty was furious at first, but public sentiment was strange. Admiration mixed with unease. The press called it the Duel of the Giants, a fight so fierce that even pride had drowned in its wake. In Boston, the story came home like a storm. The Constitution had faced the might of Nelson's flagship and lived. America had not conquered, but neither had it bowed, and so each nation made the story its own. For Britain, victory remained a symbol of endurance, proof that even shattered, she would not sink. For America, Constitution became a living myth, the wooden embodiment of defiance. But beneath the politics and pride, something deeper had begun. Sailors who'd fought in that battle never forgot what they saw: two ships built for destruction discovering mercy. In every tavern and port across the Atlantic, they told the story differently, but with the same ending. That day, the sea had forced men to remember their humanity. Years passed, both ships were rebuilt, restored, displayed as relics of glory. Children walked their decks, running hands over the scars left by cannonballs. Old sailors, gray and broken, told the tale again and again. How the Constitution and victory fought to the edge of death, then refused to cross it. Historians in this alternate world would later call it the turning point. The moment when naval warfare began to evolve from slaughter to science, from pride to purpose. Britain and America, now wary rivals, turned from war toward competition. In shipyards, in design, in innovation. Iron slowly replaced oak. Steam replaced wind. But the memory of that duel lingered in every rivet, every engine, every blueprint. Because once, out there on the gray Atlantic, two wooden giants had nearly destroyed each other, and in stopping had taught the world something far greater than victory. At sunset, the Victory and the Constitution drifted apart for the last time. Neither fired again. Neither sank. They simply vanished into the horizon, carried by the same wind that had once tried to kill them both. And in their wake, the modern world began. Decades passed, but the sea never forgot. Long after the cannon smoke vanished, long after the men who fought that battle were gone, the names Constitution and Victory still echoed across the harbors of two nations. Not as emblems of war, but as reminders of what war had cost and what it had revealed. For Britain, the duel had been a revelation. It proved that power could not rest forever on tradition. The Royal Navy, still vast and proud, began to change. Shipwrights in Chatham, Portsmouth, and Devonport studied what had happened that day. The age of the giant, lumbering ship of the line was ending. A new generation of vessels, faster, leaner, more precise, began to take form. Innovation, not inheritance, became the new commandment of the empire. For America, the effect was even more profound. The Constitution's defiance became the Republic's first great myth, the story of a small nation standing equal before the oldest empire on earth. From that myth came ambition. Shipyards along the New England coast swelled with purpose. Young engineers spoke of hull shapes and new metals. By 1830, a new American fleet was taking shape. Frigates of composite build, experimental steam-assisted designs. Ships meant not just to fight, but to endure. The Atlantic, once an arena of war, became a laboratory for progress. Rivalry remained, but it was rivalry of invention, a contest fought with blueprints and ideas. And somewhere within that quiet competition, an unspoken respect grew. When Captain Durham died in 1829, an old man walking the Portsmouth docks with a cane, sailors still followed him to hear the story. He never spoke of victory or defeat, only of what the sea had taught him. "No ship rules the ocean," he would say. "We are all only guests here. The sea lends us its mercy, then takes it back." On the other side of the ocean, Isaac Hull lived to see the Constitution restored and displayed in Boston Harbor. When the Navy proposed sending her to sea again, Hull refused. "Let her rest," he said. "She carried a nation's hope once. That is enough." By mid-century, both ships had become monuments. Children walked their decks in awe. Veterans touched the scars on the planking and fell silent, and every year a strange tradition began. British sailors visiting Boston, Americans visiting Portsmouth, crossing the same ocean their ancestors had nearly died upon. They no longer called it the battlefield of empires, they called it the shared sea. Historians named that duel the beginning of the Age of Reason at sea, not because it ended war, but because it gave war a conscience. No longer could power rest solely on dominance. Now it demanded understanding, of engineering, of weather, of humanity itself. The consequences rippled outward. The Crimean War saw the first ironclads, designs inspired by lessons drawn from the old wooden giants. Across the Atlantic, American shipyards built their own, blending innovation with memory. Each new generation of sailors carried the same quiet oath, never again for pride alone. And yet pride never dies easily. In the taverns of London and Boston alike, men still argued which ship had truly won. Old salts insisted victory had held the line. Patriots swore Constitution had triumphed by endurance. But those who had seen the sea, truly seen it, knew the truth. Neither had won. Both had survived. And survival, in that vast and merciless ocean, was miracle enough. By the dawn of the 20th century, the world that their battle had created came full circle. Iron had become steel, steam had given way to turbines, but the friendship between the two nations, born in that storm of oak and cannon smoke, endured. When British and American fleets met again, it was no longer as enemies but as allies. In this alternate timeline, during their first joint naval exercise, the Royal Navy's flagship sent a lantern signal across the waves. To old Ironsides from victory, we remember, and across the dark Atlantic the reply came blinking through the mist. And so do we. For a moment, across that shared horizon time folded. The ghosts of Hull and Durham seemed to stand again upon their decks, smiling faintly, knowing that what they began in fury had ended in understanding. Even now, in this imagined century, the sea remains impartial. It swallows pride as easily as it does ships. It humbles kings and captains alike. But when the wind is just right, sailors say they can still hear the echo of that old battle. The thunder of guns rolling faintly over calm waters, followed by silence. Not the silence of death, but of respect. In the museums of Boston and Portsmouth, the two ships still stand. Their timbers are dark, their decks polished smooth by centuries of footsteps. Visitors trace their hands along the scars, not knowing that they touch the beginning of modern history. At night, when the crowds are gone and the harbor lights flicker, it's said that the masts of both ships creak at the same hour, the wood shifting as if in conversation across the ocean. Perhaps it's only wind and tide. Or perhaps the sea remembers what men forget. Because victory, as those two captains learned, is never about who fires last or sails away. True victory is endurance, the courage to face destruction and still choose mercy. That is what the sea taught them. And that is what the world became because of them. Two ships, two nations, one ocean that refused to take sides. Their battle ended long ago, but their legacy sails on, carried by every ship that crosses the Atlantic. By every sailor who learns that even in war, there can be grace. And if you ever stand by the water and listen closely, the wind might still whisper their names. Constitution. Victory. Two ghosts, bound by the same tide, forever drifting beyond the horizon together.